everybody, and welcome back to the Her Story TV and the Her Story podcast. This is Gertrude Mache here in beautiful Melbourne, Australia. And today I am graced with the presence of yet another fascinating woman. Welcome, welcome, welcome to our tribe. Please tell everybody your full name, where you're based, how old you are, and share your story with us today.
It's a great pleasure to be here. My name is Irene Smalls. I'm based in Boston and I'm 73 years old. And the story I have to share with you is a story of segregation in the United States. I grew up in the 1950s when Harlem, where I was born, was a community, a Southern community that just happened to be in the North because there was open doors and open hearts. I mean, I grew up when there was no crime, no drugs, no graffiti, no dirt in the Black community. And the community was so safe that people went to bed at night and left their doors open. In that time, there was a counter narrative that was counter to the prevailing societal view of Black inferiority. And the understanding, I won't even say the concept, the understanding was that Black is beautiful, Black is powerful. And I had gone to the segregated public schools, and the only books we had were books with white children. The official reading text was Fun with Dick and Jane. A few of you may remember that series of Fun with Dick and Jane with the little sister Sally and the dog Spot. But there were no Black children. There were no children of color. And basically, Black people were invisible. So in this 99% Black school with a 99% Black classroom, there was this book about these little blue-eyed blonde kids. But my kindergarten teacher was very smart. She brought in Little Brown Baby with the sparkling eyes and all of these stories of the Black writers, County Cullen, Paul Laurence Dunbar. I mean, to this day, Little Brown Baby with the sparkling eyes is my favorite piece of literature. One of the things that I endeavored to do was to write stories that reflected Black children. Psychologists say that children form their self-concept largely between 0 and 3 years of age. And so to have a young child only exposed to white images really can be very damaging or leave them with a low self-concept. I have started a publishing company, Night Baby Night, Positive Affirmations for Black Babies, to read stories to Black babies each night that talk about how beautiful they are and how wonderful Black and brown and all of the colors of the rainbow really are. And this baby is a reflection of the colors of the rainbow. And I reflected that in my own children in terms of telling them stories of how wonderful they are and how grateful I am to be their mother, to be in their lives. So for women who are interested in writing their stories and sharing their stories, there is such richness that we all have from wherever we started, whether it's in a suburb, in a city, in a rural area. Each of us has a great story that they can share. And so I have been a storyteller for over 25 years because I love to jump around. When I went to kindergarten, I told my teacher I was smart enough already. I didn't need to learn how to read. I didn't want to learn how to write because I was smart. And my kindergarten teacher said, yes, you are very smart. And she read all of these beautiful, beautiful books. But in Harlem, I really saw and impressed myself with all of the richness there was of the Black people. There were, our mailman had a PhD in physics. He couldn't get a job as a, physics professor, so he delivered mail. That we had all these intelligent and wonderful folks. And I made it my mission to make sure that I told the story of all these wonderful people who at the time weren't given the chances and the opportunities that they deserved. I ended up in a career publishing books with Little Brown and Simon Schuster and Scholastic and all the major publishers. But I found that even then I couldn't tell the stories I wanted to tell, the stories that were my passion, the stories that were my belief. And so the Night Baby Night series of books focus on positive images, but also on sleep. As simple as it sounds, sleep is one of the major aspects of inequality, in particular American society, since I'm based in America. 46% of African Americans, according to an Emory University study, have short sleep, 5 hours or less. And African Americans are twice as likely to have short sleep deprivation, than whites. There are a lot of reasons for that. And a lot of it is, shall we say, structural factors. They live in more crowded neighborhoods, they live in noisier neighborhoods, and they have more stress. The micro and macro aggressions that people of color are faced with every day gets into their nights and affects their sleep. And sleep is one of the most important things for children. And I've spent a lifetime writing books for children. So the Night Baby Night series focus on sleep training, sleep routine. And I raised 3 children. And no one ever said anything to me about sleep training. I got tired of them. I put them in bed. That was my approach. And I found out that sleep routines and sleep training is vital for the full development, physical and mental, of young children. And importantly, the research is very clear. Getting sufficient and adequate sleep in children is important for their academic achievement. With COVID learning loss and the Centers for Disease Control, as well as the Academy of American Pediatrics, have issued reports on COVID learning loss, focusing on children of color in the ages 5 to 9. And 5 to 9 are really important because that's when you learn to read. You learn to read from kindergarten to 3rd grade, and then from 3rd grade on for the rest of your life, you read to learn. But if you miss that important window, if you miss that window, that opportunity to develop that skill, then your ability to function in life and to be successful diminishes. And if you look at people who are in prison, a large number of them are illiterate. A friend of mine said, we could eliminate half of the problems in the Black community if we made sure that all Black children by 3rd grade were reading at the 3rd grade level. And that was monumental. That we could cut the prisons in half, the recidivism rate in half, just by teaching children to read. And it's such a simple thing to do, but it takes time and it takes focus. So in writing a series of books, I've been writing stories that remind me of Harlem as homage to that segregated, loving Black community, but also writing about Black history. And I've been working on a 12-month Black history series. And, only recently has there been acknowledgement that there is no Black history, there is no African American history. It's all American history. And that African Americans are intricately entwined in the American story. And so I decided to write, rather than one book for February, write a book for January, February, March, April, May, June, July, August, September, October, and November. And I went back and read the original slave narratives. My family is from Charleston, South Carolina. And actually, I grew up with a Southern accent. I can have a Southern accent around my relatives. And I learned how to speak standard English in school, but the relatives were written, the narratives were written in a deep Southern dialect. And because I grew up with a Southern dialect, I was able to find and understand those stories. And I found things like the Jack-o'-lantern. I found stories of Ebony C, a true story from 1803 of a group of Igbos who refused to be enslaved. I had a Black History Month program a few weeks ago, and I was talking to a young boy about the Igbo story from 1803, and he said, I never heard of Africans who fought back. And I said, yes, child, that Africans were not a passive people. They did not take the loss of their freedom and their homes and their families lightly, that many of them chose the ultimate price of giving up their lives rather than be enslaved or have their children enslaved. In 1803, a slave ship was brought to off the coast of Georgia, and rather than be enslaved, the body of them, every man, woman, and child walked into the sea and drowned themselves. Because in their religion, death was freedom. And when you die, you go back home. And they had no boats, they had no ships, they had no way to go back home. But they knew that they were not going to be enslaved. And to see that little boy realize that, we came from a proud people. We came from a people who knew they were people, thank you very much, and fought with everything they had to make the decisions that was best for them and for their families as they understood it. And so again, I found the jack-o'-lantern, a creature with googly goggly eyes. And the purpose of the jack-o'-lantern was to keep slave children safe, because slave children had no protection. If anyone came along and saw a child alone, they would take them because they were property. It's like taking a plant or a bush or whatever, and the child would never be seen. So in a soft and gentle way, some wise grandparent or parent made up a story of this scary creature called the jack-o'-lantern, who taps you on the shoulder and takes you in the swamp to slowly sink and slowly die. And so all of these stories were there. And then again, African Americans were part of America from 1619, and they were part of America 12 months of the year. In November, they had harvest festivals, and they were called a straw beaters festival because they would have a special boy who would play long straws on a fiddle at the Thanksgiving harvest dance. And this was largely a festival where African Americans got to work all day and then walk a couple of miles and walk all night. But it gave them the freedom to see family and friends and lovers that they normally wouldn't get to see, because they could freely invite each other. Because again, the slave owners would have the opportunity to get 24 hours worth of work out of their property.
And so, Irene, the stories you are sharing today are just absolute music to my soul. As a people, most African people don't realize the richness of our history, the knowledge, the skills that we carry. And especially for African Americans to remember that you stand on the shoulders of giants, people who had knowledge, who had skills, who had pride. I just love hearing you speak, especially with the advent of Black History Month, coming to an end today for you. It's already Wednesday, the 1st of March for me, but it is just awesome to hear that these stories were captured. Now, you have been responsible for writing these stories into history. Why is it important for us as Black people to capture the stories ourselves? What is the significance of that?
Well, the significance, Chester Higgins said that African Americans are taught everybody's history but their own. And we're taught European history, we're taught Irish history, we're taught Spanish history, but we're not taught Black history. And when I go into a classroom and do a Black history presentation, the Black children have their head down because they're so ashamed. And I say to them that we have nothing to be ashamed of. We did not do it. We did not bring ourselves to these shores. We did not enforce laws of Jim Crow and, separation but equal and all of these other things. We can take responsibility for moving ourselves forward from those conditions. So it's important that African American children hear the stories of who they are and how they are. One of the great tragedies, at least for me, because I visit Harlem, New York today, and I see so many Black people who don't have a sense of who they are and how they are. It's almost like when in my day, Black people were strutting down the street or they were diddy bopping. They had style, they had class. But now I see people in the Uggs and the torn jeans. In my day, you did not walk out with holy clothes, okay? If you only had one good pair, you washed that pair of jeans every day but it's, again, society says that's a style, but I'm like, wait a minute. No, that's not a style. We're aping, it's almost, in some extent, we become characters of ourselves. And we were creators of style. You know, the Harlem Renaissance, everyone talks about that, but there were so many aspects of culture and music. I mean, jazz is the only original art form from the United States. The Lindy Hop, I went to a Lindy Hop class to learn how to do the Lindy Hop, which was a big dance that Black people created in Harlem, you know, in the 40s and 50s. So there's so many things that we have to be proud of that we're not made aware of. And I think it's by design, unfortunately.
So people just need to be reminded of who they truly are. I think that is just an absolute crucial thing. Now, you are helping other people capture their own stories.
Yes.
Take me through that process. If there was somebody listening to this podcast right now and they feel this burning desire that they have a story to tell, take us through the step-by-step process on how you're helping people realize that dream.
One of the things I would do is I say, first, we need to talk. We need to talk about what you want to express, why you want to express it. And then from that process, we're going to take notes. We're not going to start the intimidating writing process right away. We're going to take notes. And then from those notes, we begin to shape the narrative. From those notes, we begin to see what's important, what's less important, that we'll begin to think about what research needs to be done, that we'll begin to think about what other characters are part of your story. Is it an autobiography? Is it a biography? Is it, you know, a slice of life kind of story? So we begin to kind of think about genre. You know, where does that story belong in the canon of literature? And also, what are your goals? What's important to you? And those are the things that start the beginning of the process of creating your work of art and your contribution of sharing who you are to the world. Someone told me once that every single human being is unique, that we all have a unique genetic imprint, and there's no one before and there'll be no one after who's just like you, who has the unique set of personality characteristics, physical characteristics, mental characteristics. There's no one just like you. So the writing process is to focus on the uniqueness of your story and you recognizing your own beauty and power.
I absolutely love it. It's just incredible what can happen when you realize who you truly are and you embrace that and you capture it. There's an African proverb that says, until the lion starts to write his own story, the hunter will always be the victor.
Yes.
So we need to write these stories into history. The history books have been written for us. You know, as I was growing up, we always used to look at the world map. And I only realized when I was about 30 years old that the continent of Africa is 3 times larger than the United States. Look at how the map was drawn to try and minimize us and make us look and feel smaller than we really are. So I absolutely love your work. I love what you're doing. I'm hoping that I can entice you to come and speak at our International Women's Day Summit in Washington, D.C. We'll talk a little bit about that when we're finished with the interview. But let me take you now into the future. If you could teleport into the future and meet the 100-year-old you, and if you could have a conversation with this wise woman who has led you to that point, based on how you have lived your life and how you are living your life, what would you say to her when you finally catch up with her?
Well, I would say, number one, you didn't need to be afraid. That I grew up in a family that didn't particularly want me, that didn't appreciate me, and I always felt alone. And at 7 years old, I had to become the head of the household. I had to raise my younger brothers and sisters. And so as a 7-year-old negotiating life, acting as an adult, but being really 7, it was always frightening. I always thought, oh, I can't do this, I can't do that. You know, I was small, I was 7. I didn't have a mom or a dad to help, but I had to make it work. I absolutely had to make it work. And if I look at my life in terms of, I've done a lot of stuff. I mean, I got $1 million worth of land for a Black church for $1. And again, because I kept it low key, I knew where to go for the information, who to facilitate, how to make things happen. That I adopted a child when I was going through a divorce and I had no job and I had no money, but there was a need. There was a child who needed to be taken care of. And so I just said, get in the car. That was it. I don't know how we're going to figure this out. I had no money for clothes or nothing. He had a toothbrush. That was all he had. So I wrote about that in my book, Because You're Lucky. And at the end of that experience, I realized that, I told my children that we were the lucky ones because we got a new brother, pretty much in one package, no diapers, no 2-hour feedings and so on and so forth. And I think that I would tell her that she's beautiful, and she was always beautiful. I would tell her that the 7-year-old Irene, which is still a very much part of my life, she's a very dynamic force, is going to be taken care of, or was taken care of, and that it was okay. And that I was enough. I was a beauty queen. I was one of the first natural hair models in the 1960s for Afro Sheen, all of those kinds of things. But I didn't value myself because no one valued me. And so I would tell myself, wow, you're something, sister. I am proud of you.
I love to ask that question. A lot of women don't realize that that wise woman is already in us, that she is guiding us, those little promptings that we get, go left, go right, do this, do that. She's already in you, ladies, and you need to tap into the essence of who you are becoming. So, Miss Irene, today's interview has been absolutely fascinating. You embody everything that I try and share with my audience. Thank you so much for gracing us with your presence. Is there anything I should have asked you and I didn't? What are your parting thoughts for us tonight?
I think my parting thoughts are my children. And my children are the physical children that I gave birth to from my womb. My children are the ideas and books that I have written. My children are, in some cases, yet to be born, about the new projects, new ideas that I am sharing, that I am learning about. And I think that as women, because we lose our fertility and our eggs to make babies, we have to think that that's the end of our fertility. That's the end. But I'm saying, no, it's not the end. It gives rise to a whole new level of fertility, of creativity, of inspiration, of spiritual growth. And so I want to say that I look to the future and my children.
I absolutely love everything about what you've said. Our ideas are our children. These are birthed from the essence of who we are. We incubate these ideas, we bring them into reality. Beautiful way to end this segment. Thank you so much, Miss Irene. And thank you to everybody who tuned in. Come back again tomorrow when I interview yet another amazing guest. If you can make it to Washington, D.C., our summit is the 8th to the 11th of March, 2023. So I'm actually leaving Australia tomorrow evening to be in the United States for this amazing event. It will be the first time in the last 3 years that we are meeting in person. COVID really made things difficult for us. So I'm really excited to be reconnecting with the original women who helped me form this movement. Have a fantastic day, everybody. Go onto the website, herstorycircle.net. Register to speak. We still have a space for 5 more speakers, and register to attend the event. We will live stream it, so there are online tickets as well. Be a part of this amazing movement and help us make some magic happen. Bye for now, everybody. Thanks, Miss Irene.
Thank you.